Hey guys, Bump here, bringing you this 10.2 Unholy Death Knight Advanced Raid Rotation Guide. This is a follow-up video on my beginner rotation guide, which is meant to take you from 95% of the way there to 100% way there. I will try and essentially teach you everything I personally use to do as much damage in raid, and so far it has been pretty successful. So hopefully that will also help you excel in a raiding environment as an Unholy Death Knight. We would discuss a couple of min-max things, as well as more kind of general concepts around cooldown management, that kind of thing. Anyway, let's just jump straight into it. Before I start though, I will assume you watched the beginner guide, so I won't cover the basics here. This will be just additions to the basics, so the core rotation, kind of how to manage your cooldown. I assume you know that this is the min-max stuff that we need to focus on. Anyway, to start, let's talk about resources and their proc priority. So, as you do a core rotation, you will get a choice. Do I spend runes or do I spend runic power? Because generally, one of those is going to overcap. As an Unholy Death Knight, it's going to be runic power that has priority. This doesn't mean that you, whenever you get runic power, you just spend it back down to 0. Essentially, it means that you should never end up in a situation where you spend runic power that goes beyond the 100 cap. So if you're like at 90 runic power, use a fetching strike, that generates 20, goes to 110, but that can't happen, right? So it goes to 100, and you wasted 10. When I look at WoW analysis of people doing runs, and I see anything above 1% runic power wasted, I definitely know that, okay, this is not the right priority, they should be spending more runic power. That's the first one. When it comes to proc priority, this is all like the Sudden Doom. Sudden Doom procs can overlap. Essentially, have one and then generate new one, so the trinket, the buff just refreshes, which wastes your proc. So those should also be spent quickly, because it is essentially the same thing as spending runic power. It also has high priority. If you don't follow this, what ends up happening is that, for instance, Army of Dead with Army of Damn talent doesn't come off cooldown at 3-minute mark, and suddenly you're desyncing your cooldowns because you don't manage runic power properly. All right, that's the kind of negative aspect of it, and just not using runic death calls enough, which do a lot of damage. Just a quick one before we go into the next topic. Just want to advertise myself a little bit here. I do offer coaching now, so one-on-one over Discord, where I look at VODs, logs, and live gameplay to help you excel as the Unholy Death Knight. So if you feel like this video doesn't quite get you where your goal is, do pop me a PM on Discord, and we can talk about doing some one-on-one sessions. Now, on to buff maintenance and weaving concept. So Unholy has a couple of buffs that we need to maintain to maximize our damage, and there's generally 2 of them. We have Icy Talons that gives you an attack speed buff, and we have Death Rod, which just increases the shadow damage the target takes. Both of these are on a 10-second duration, so you just need to refresh them every 10 seconds. This is done by hitting a Death Call in a raiding environment. And we don't really need to pay attention to this if we played rotation properly, which is when we do the weaving thing. Weaving means not hitting the same spell like 10 times in a row. You want to kind of use one, use the other, use the third kind of vibe. So when I look at logs of people and I see them sending like 4 Calling Shadows in a row, I instantly know, oh, hang on. That is not ideal. You should, as a general rule, not press one ability more than like 3 times in a row. The one exception is Death Call and Gargle, but other than that, it is a good idea to kind of, weave your abilities around so that you naturally maintain the resource buffs and don't these maintenance buffs and don't actually need to pay attention to them. That's the rule. Simple, easy. Try and do that, and it's going to be much better uptime for you. Now let's talk about the opener. So the opener is crucial for the Unholy Death Knight because such a big part of our damage comes into that small window. This is true for like the general 3-minute burst window, but as a general rule, we are very bursted class, which means that the actual burst window has a much larger importance than sorting out the rotation in between. Here's the opener you're supposed to follow, right? It's set in stone. That is the buttons you should be pressing every single pull when you do it. To help this, we have 2 macros, which are useful. got them up here. The first one, it handles that Dark Transformation and Gargle line and the potion. Put all those together and then press that. Technically, it's best to do it on like a new empty GCD, because obviously Gargle is off the GCD, so if you press that too early, it's going to come before Dark Transformation. It doesn't matter that much as long as it's like not like 2 seconds beforehand, right? Furthermore, we have another macro, Unholy Assault, and Power Rune Weapon, and your trinket. In tempo to all trinkets that are relevant on a 20-second duration and fit really nicely into that specific macro. Those are 2 macros you use, frees up some keys, key bindings, which is quite nice, and helps you execute the opener without having to, doing piano on your keyboard, right? Now, this is, once you've done that, that's not like finished, that's not all done, because we need to follow up with how we essentially buff our Gargle in the optimal way. So once you execute that sequence, what happens after is that you're going to be spending as much runic power as possible to buff up your Gargle. Gargle does increase damage for any runic power you spend when it's during its duration. And how it works out essentially is that a death call you send at the start of Gargle is going to buff all the casts after that point. Whereas a death call sent at the end, that one will only buff like 1 or 2 casts. This means that spending runic power quickly, as soon as you can, is important, because it means that more casts are buffed. So as a general rule, when Gargle's out, after you execute the set opener, you want to prep death call every GCD you can. So Sundew procs, press them immediately. As soon as you get above 30 runic power, send that death call immediately. Okay? Second point, when it comes to Death and Decay. So you can see in the opener, we have a Death and Decay, or Defile, whatever build you're running. There's going to be a secondary one coming down as well. So once the first one runs out, you want to pop down another Death and Decay. We do this to benefit from the Unholy Ground buff, which gives us 5% haste, which is quite good. Gargle scales very well haste. When it comes to Defile, you actually want to hold it a bit further. The Defile buff lasts like 3 seconds after Defile actually finishes. So you want to wait 2 or 3 seconds before you pop down the second Defile. Do make sure you actually don't let the buff drop, because if you do, you're going to have to start back on 1 stack. It stacks up to 8. So drop it down just before the old 8 stack is about to run off. When it comes to racials, there's essentially 2 to look out for. Berserking for Troll and Blood Fury for Orc. Berserking should be used roughly 10 seconds after you press the summon Gargle, so that's roughly when you put down the second Death and Decay. With Defile, that would be like 3 seconds before the second Defile. For Blood Fury, you can safely use that with Unholy Assault, just macro that into the macro you already have and be done with it. That's it, that's how you optimize Gargle. Now, what about Festermight Strike and Scourge Strike and your wound management here? You just want to go down to 0 and then Festermight Strike up. Again, hitting Scourge Strike here gives you Festermight, which is a strength buff, which buffs all the cast after that point. So you want to generate those as quickly as possible, which means that you go down to 0 wounds ASAP, and once you go down to 0, you press Festermight Strike and you Scourge Strike back to 0. That's how you do it, because that's going to optimize how many Festermight stacks you get. Very small bit of min-max here. Towards the end of your Gargle window, hitting a Scourge Strike to get a Festermight stack gets more important than hitting Death Call to buff off your Gargle. This is because essentially Festermight gives a percentage increase on the remaining cast versus Death Call, which just gives a flat increase. So if the casts are strong enough, that percentage increase will be better. However, it doesn't really matter, because you're going to be, you won't get that choice very often. If you Scourge Strike down to 0 and you Festermight Strike back up, it's not often that you can go, oh, I want to hit Death Call, I'm going to hit Scourge Strike. You often get the scenario where you, okay, do I hit Death Call or do I hit Festermight Strike? Well, then you're definitely going to hit Death Call anyway. So that's it. That's how you optimize it. Hope that's clear. Outside the opener, well, at the 3-minute mark, you're just going to do this all over again. I know it's difficult to kind of make sure everything aligns. I think I would recommend that if you find it difficult to essentially replicate the opener at the 3-minute mark, do you just sit and like wait for 3 seconds to generate some resources and wait? Like, our damage outside of cooldowns is minimal, so if you end up sitting the AFK for 3 seconds, it is completely fine. It's much better to do that and then execute a perfect 3-minute burst window than kind of, you know, spamming your buttons up to the point and then not quite getting it all right in the burst window and then not having that being that strong. Much better to calm down, wait 3 seconds, let those runes recharge, make sure you start out from a queen slate and then go for this next burst window. That's my recommendation. All right, let's talk about cooldown usage. So opener and the 3-minute mark, we talked about how to execute that, but let's talk about how you actually fit in all your different cooldowns and so on. Well, here's a nice little summary. The Unholy Death Knight cooldowns are all on a 45-second CD multiple. So you have like Unholy Blight, Dark Transformation, Apocalypse, 45 seconds. We have Unholy Assault, 1.5 minutes, and we have Gargle, Army effectively, 3 minutes. So if you use everything in cooldown, they will all align throughout the fight, which is what you want to do in general. I talked about this in the beginner guide. It just means that, you know, keep track of when cooldowns come up and just press them as soon as possible. The negative aspects that can arise comes from, you know, delaying stuff by 10 seconds. That's going to end up with your 3-minute cooldown window delayed by 30 seconds, which might mean losing an entire 3-minute burst window, which is terrible, which is why we're so careful about pressing everything we can as soon as possible. Empowering Weapon obviously is an outlier. It has a 2-minute cooldown, but we hold it for the 3-minute mark. This is also true with any trinkets. If it's 2-minute cooldown, you hold it for 3 minutes. 3-minute cooldown obviously fits perfectly, and 1.5 you can use one in between with Unholy Assault, no problemo there. Let's talk about how this kind of fits into some of the bosses this tier, because it's not as obvious as just press your cooldowns on cooldown every single boss and you're going to be fine. Because we have some damage amp windows. So especially Gnarl Root and Smolderon have these phases where the boss essentially takes 100% more damage in 20 seconds windows. And here's something we need to think carefully about, because as a general rule, you know, it's better to use 2 armies than 1 or 2 3-minute burst windows than 1 buffed with 100% gain. However, if Bloodlust is sent during that amp, it changes. So, for instance, Gnarl Root, if your raid lost during the damage amp, you definitely want to hold the cooldowns for that, because using 1 set of cooldowns with a damage amp and lost is better than using 2 set of cooldowns without lost, essentially, and damage amp. So, on Gnarl Root, on Mythic, you're probably going to wait until the 2-minute mark and then send your cooldowns there. On Smolderon, same thing. If you lost a pool, you use cooldowns a pool. If you lost at another point, you're going to have to save your cooldowns for that point. And at this stage, it becomes a bit tricky to manage, because we have so many cooldowns, you're all on different CDs and so on. You need to essentially sit down and plan ahead of time, where can I use my cooldowns so they all sync up and get back on time. For instance, here's my Smolderon plan, right? We have the difference if we lost on pool versus not lost in pool. You can see how we plan out your cooldowns, make sure, okay, they all line up at the 4-minute mark. We're going to hold a couple things there for like 20 seconds, that kind of vibe. This is what you need to think about. Same thing, Gnarl Root, if you lost the first damage amp, which is at around 2 minutes, well, on pool, you can use Unholy Blight, Dark Transformation, Apocalypse, Unholy Assault, and Empowering Weapon, because all of those will be back at the 2-minute mark. However, you cannot use a trinket, you can't use Gargle, and you can't use Army. That's how it works. You need to plan ahead and make sure that, okay, where to actually use my cooldowns exactly, have a plan, and then execute it so that you do the maximum amount of damage. Cool. Let's move on to Festermight. This is kind of like the min-max aspect of your standard rotation. So Festermight is a strength buff. It stacks up over time as you pop wounds, and it has a strictly flat 20-second duration. Essentially, once you started a window, it would always end 20 seconds after that point, regardless if you add up stacks or whatever. Now, to maximize this, we want to generate as many stacks as possible as early into the window as possible. So if you integrate the strength up over time, you get the maximum kind of value. To do this, every 45 seconds, you want to start a fresh Festermight window with an Apocalypse. You instantly get 4 stacks, fits very nicely, and absolute damage in the optimal way. However, as I said, it's a 20-second duration, so if you just send it back to back, well, it's going to be ready to start again at the 40-second mark, not 45 seconds with Apocalypse. What you need to do here is delay the start of your next Festermight window after the one that started by Apocalypse finishes. So how it's going to work out is that you hit Apocalypse, that starts on a window, 20 seconds after that point, you let it drop, and you don't start it until 3 or 4 seconds afterwards. To do this, generally, you want to go a bit low on runes towards the end there. You might want to stack up some runic power, things like that. So once it finishes, you can hit Festering Strike, you can hit some couple Death Calls, you can hit Outbreak, and then you can Scourge Strike and start a new one. So you get that bit of a delay. To be honest, you can delay the start of your Apocalypse window as well. So if you end up accidentally starting your second Festermight early, you can just, at the end of that, hit a couple buttons, which is not Scourge Strike, and then go into Apocalypse as soon as it comes up, and then start your new one. Right? That's how you want to do it. And if you do this properly, you're also going to end up getting the most benefit out of your 3-minute burst window, because at that point, it's really important that the Apocalypse in that sequence starts a new Festermight. This is what I talked about earlier, where you kind of AFK and don't do anything. So it's much better to let that Festermight drop before you throw him a burst and not hit Scourge Strike until Apocalypse. Because if you hit Scourge Strike early there, it's going to really mess up the Festermight overlap. So instead, you can hit Outbreak, you can hit Festering Strike, maybe Death Call. You do want to save up some rune power, but do not hit Scourge Strike because you want that window to start with the Apocalypse in the sequence. Right, that's general rule. This will get messed up. It's tricky to hold, and it's like a 2% gain if you do it properly, So it's not like the end of the world, but still something to focus on and something to min-max, because there is gain to be had, specifically when you do Festermight. Cool. Final topic, Cleave in a raid environment. So how do you do that? Where does it matter? And so on. As a general rule, in Tempo 2, we do quite good Cleave, because Magus from a tier set does really nice Cleave passively. Anyway, actively what you can do is leverage Deafening Decay. Deafening Decay made sure Scourge Strike / Claw and Shadows Cleave. So whenever there is any kind of Cleave, you will just pop that down and then spam Scourge Strike and Claw and Shadows. You don't need to worry about wounds there. If there's 2 targets, you can just spam Scourge Strike and be fine with it. It's more damage. So, on bosses like Gnarlroot, second boss Igira, when you ever have a Cleave during the council, when on Tindral, for instance, and on Firewreck, whenever this adds, pop down Deafening Decay and just spam Scourge Strike. Right? That's the first thing you can do. Hitting Outbreak doesn't really make sense because it has to be up for far too long for it to kind of get a gain. So you can just ignore Outbreak. Much better to spend that on just spamming Scourge Strike. Having said that, Dip is enfeeble, but I don't think it's worthwhile still. Anyway, the second kind of tier of Cleave comes into play when you're running Defile, which you will be doing on specific encounters like Gnarlroot and Tindral. When you're running Defile build, where you get access to Epidemic, which is just insane when it comes to AoE. In this scenario, what you want to do is dot everything up as soon as possible. You do this either by hitting Outbreak or Unholy Blight if you saved Unholy Blight for that specific burst, and then just spam Epidemic. And then once you're out of Runic Power, you just do Scourge Strike in your Defile Cleave, because Defile is also going to be popped down, just like Deafening Decay, so you can just do lots of Cleave. That's the vibe. So without Defile build, it's just Deafening Decay and Scourge Strike Cleave. With Defile build, dot everything up, do Epidemic and Scourge Strike Cleave, and then you're just going to do maximum damage. Right. That's everything I had for you guys today. Hope that was useful and that you can apply it into the raid. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought about this video. Upvote, downvote, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.